It started now.
Okay, so now that we're recording, I just want to thank you guys again for being here. And the objective of today's call is to be able to talk about some reopening strategies. Some of us have come across some good ideas and some of us are still a little bit nervous. So I want for us all to be able to share some ideas and some of our inspiration, and hopefully by the end of this call, we'll feel a little bit more brave, possibly to take that first participant back or move into another phase. So with that said, I'm interested in what is the percentage of clients that you have brought back into your centers, and feel free just to unmute and kind of just shout out a little bit, hopefully have just a little bit of interaction and a little dialogue. It looks like we have a little bit of a small group, so we should be able to do that without talking over each other. So personally, we have come back in our program at probably about 25% or so, where we were previously serving approximately 70 riders and participants. Right now I'm at about 22, and I'm aiming for possibly 30 by September. So that's kind of my phase 3 is getting a little tricky. So anyway, so that's where I am. Chrissy, how about you?
Okay, so we have, we started back almost 100% of our veteran participants in the beginning of August with all unmounted sessions. And then in September, we're looking at mounted sessions starting back up. So we're still finalizing some in-lesson protocol for mounted lessons. And then we're looking at restarting our youth TR participants. It's probably only about 25% in September. 25% of participants who are independent or emerging independent. And then who knows when we'll be ready to, I mean, I think that group of riders, participants will be very telling in how soon / whatever's happening in our environment and government guidelines around us as to how soon we can get back the rest of the population. So we're working on it. We're a little bit open. Yeah. Well,
but a little bit open is, as I think, a step in the right direction. And, you know, that it sounds like you kind of thought through having the unmounted veterans program and then are working towards those independent TR riders. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's great.
We're
Who else do it? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. We're also looking at some drive up sessions. We did like a pilot program for veterans at the end of July. And that was a chance for them to return their paperwork in person, because some of them don't have access to sending things digitally and didn't want to send it in the mail. So they're able to turn in their paperwork, reopening paperwork personally. And then, you know, we had the horses in the parking lot, and we, you know, kind of made cones, and we made like a little video, like, this is how you arrive, this is how you exit, this is what you do. You have to wear your mask, wind your window down. And those were really, really cool. And we're looking at, for the 75%, well, we're going to offer drive up sessions for our youth participants who won't be able to come back right away. And who knows how many that will be. We included that question in one of our surveys like a few months ago for parents, and there were only a small percentage of parents who were like, that might work for my kid. It might be hard for them to not to see the horses and not like get out of the car and go to the barn and ride. So we'll see how we can apply that to kids too.
So just to speak to that with the drive-in sessions, that was one of the things that we started doing as well, and had really great success, kind of surprising. And it took a second for parents to kind of understand, but I found that it was helpful in two ways. So first, it got everybody kind of coming back to the barn, and it got everybody coming back to see the horses and to see their instructor friends and get out of the house. I mean, honestly. But then it did another thing for me that was a little bit unexpected, and we can get into this a little bit later too, but it really helped me get eyes on people, and it helped me see those participants that I was maybe a little worried about, whether they were going to wear a mask and whether they were going to follow directions and whether or not they wanted to put hand sanitizer on, or, you know, all of those things. So it gave me a chance to see everybody and to understand, you know, where they were in this process. It also got me connected with parents again. Some are a little more interested than others. So it ended up kind of really taking a slightly different turn than I expected. And it now has me thinking about, so we were setting aside an entire day or like a morning basically, and breaking it into shifts where they would RSVP and say, and then I would write back and say, okay, you know, the time to see Jack and Princess is going to be at 9:30. And so then they would come at 9:30, and then I would rotate with staff and horses. So all my horses didn't have to be out there at the same time. And so it gave the horses something to do too, which was fun. And they were interested in what's in the car, you know, who had a banana for breakfast. And it really was great. But now that we're working towards more of a reopening kind of riding program, I'm thinking I don't want to get rid of that, but maybe I let those clients come at the same time as their lesson time, where we still get to check in and see about the mask and see about the hand sanitizer and kind of check on interest. I'm still, jury's out a little on that, but that's kind of a thought that I'm having, because I can't go on with these big events, running out of time in the day, where we had a ton of it early on. Now that we're getting back, it's a little bit harder. So, but I totally recommend doing a drive up. We called it pony driving. So, yeah, it was, yeah. So I think that's really great. So, okay. Who else do we want to hear from? I see Leslie.
Hey, it's Leslie from Happy Trails. I am the executive director. Hi, I know Nicole's going to jump on here in just a minute, and I actually have to head down to the dairy, so let me give you a quick little update.
Yeah.
We just finished our 8-week session. We did a short session, brought back our veterans and our TR kids that were a little bit more independent. We had 30 riders. When we stopped classes, we were at 80 plus. So that was, you know, a little bit, almost a third of them. And then we start back next week and we are at 50 riders. So with that, we've got our veterans, TR, which is fairly small, and then our EFP that's got about 25 kiddos in that. So we've changed so much of how we're doing things, but we're trying to get as many back as we can, many of our kiddos as we can back. So so yeah, we have lots of new, just like everybody else, policies and procedures in place, which hasn't been an inexpensive way of doing business, but we're good with that. We've actually hired a class manager that will come in. One of our policies that we have in place is no more than 2 riders per instructor. So our classes are usually of 4 kiddos. So that's, you know, doubled our what we've been able to do with our instructors. So we're excited about that. We think it's going to work. Hope it's going to work, fingers crossed. And we've done quite a bit. I love the drive up classes. Haven't done that. We've done quite a bit to keep our riders and volunteers connected with Happy Trails. And one of them, last week we did a real drive-in movie. And so we showed Trolls in our parking lot, and our local theater did all the popcorn for us, and we had a 32-inch screen. So it was just like you said, Courtney, it was fun to see everybody and to see their families. And so so we've been trying to do our best to keep everybody connected.
Cool. Thanks, Leslie.
You bet.
One of the concerns that I'm having kind of moving forward is that so far I'm doing one participant at a time, and I'm a little nervous about having multiple households in the space at the same time. So how, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but like, how are you handling having like multiple families and or volunteers, and then of course instructors at the same time? Are you able to social distance? And
So yes, so we have been able to social distance. We have X's on everything, which, you know, who can sit here, which family can sit there. We did do a video. I forget who we got that idea from at the very beginning. We did do videos of what it's going to look like when you come back, where you drive in, where you park, where you drop your rider off at, what they do. You know, they'll come in, head over to a hand washing station that we now have, do that. We now have helmets for every rider, and that are all labeled for that specific rider. The other thing we're not doing is our volunteers are not in the barn. So our barn is closed. So our instructors and our new class manager are getting all the animals ready, all the horses ready for classes. And then we have a sanitation station now. We've always prided ourselves on having really nice equipment and making sure we take care of it. And now we went and bought all kinds of cheap stuff so that we can wash it and toss it. And so each volunteer has their own lead rope they clip on, and then the instructors have their own that they keep. Everything gets washed afterwards. I had a group of seamstresses that came in and made all of slip covers for saddle pads, saddles, everything. So that's only used once. That I had a washer and dryer donated so we can do our laundry after each class. And honestly, I kind of joke about this. To ride at Happy Trails, it's like buying a house now. I need your signature on so many different pages saying, you know, liability wise, that you've watched the video, that you've seen and you've gone through our protocols, our new protocols. Everybody is signed off on it. We do keep everybody distanced. When they come through our gate, we have a verbal health check, and we talk to everybody that's in the car. We're documenting all of that. We have, I had masks, we have hundreds of masks that were made, all different sizes. So if there's anybody in that car that doesn't have a mask with them, they're given at that point. What we've found is everybody is so excited to be back, and they're glad that we're doing something, that if we told them to stand in the corner on their head, they would do it. So everybody's been very, very good about knowing where they need to stand, where they need to sit. Everybody has been separated. And so knock on wood, it's worked so far. And it's a lot of work. I mean, you guys know, it's been a lot of work.
It sounds like you got a really good plan and systems in place. And my question to you then is, in thinking about some of how do you know that you're ready for the next phase? And one of the things for me that is a concern is, of course, adding volunteers back in and having kind of that volunteer protocol, but that's fairly easy once you start doing like staff work with some of those other independent riders. But hey, Nicole, but what about mounting and dismounting? Because as I'm moving into a different phase of slightly different impaction, really, is, you know, how close do we want to get, and what do we know about that? So, right. Wondering if you're having any thoughts about that since you've got such a good system.
Okay, Nicole Payne, you're on. Talk about our mounting, dismounting. I'm running down to the dairy. Thank you guys very much. Have a great evening. I love that you guys are doing this. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Leslie.
Later. Okay, Nicole, it's all yours.
Okay, I just jumped on. What is the prompt?
So we're kind of giving a little bit of a rundown, each of us in where we are in our reopening phases. And right now we've kind of moved into what are our considerations for either reopening at all, or how do we decide to move into another phase? And my personal question was, it sounds like you guys at Happy Trails have a pretty diligent system in place. How do you know when it's time to move into the next phase? And specifically about mounts and dismounts, how close do we want to be?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for the update. With regard to mounts and dismounts, I will preface that most of our students, in fact, I can't think of one off the top of my head right now that doesn't mount with anything less than a standby assist. So that's to say all of our students mount side by side with an instructor. So we are continuing with that, and that is in our infection control plan. The document that we put together with all of our COVID policies and procedures does dictate that masks are to be worn by everybody at all times on the property while classes are going on when they're within 6 feet of others. And then that of course includes mounting and dismounting. So masks are worn by volunteers, students, and instructors during mount and dismount, and then they can come down if the student is riding with a volunteer, a horse leader who is unclipped and further away than like just standing next to the horse, or like spotting. If they step away from the horse for a distance, we can take the masks down for that time. And we are, because of where we are in the Central Valley, we do get pretty hot. We were 109 the other day, so we don't ride if it's 100 degrees or hotter. But in the case that it's like a really hot morning or it's really humid or something and it's getting sweaty, we'll stop and we'll have volunteers take a big step back from their horse, and we'll give the students an opportunity to take their mask down and just air out a little bit, because it is, I mean, it's sweaty under there certain times.
Yeah.
Right now.
It sure is. I definitely feel you. And for that reason, in part of what we're doing is we're not doing ground lessons right now. So I know some of you guys have come back with veterans program, maybe EAL or EAP. So how are you working with that as far as social distancing and masks?
We are, again, anybody that's within 6 feet of another person is wearing masks, and really we're wearing masks pretty much all the time during class. Even as an instructor, I forget to pull mine down when I'm standing in the middle of the arena. So with the consideration for ground classes, we have hosted ground lessons, and what we're doing, again, still volunteers are wearing masks and so are students, but with the distance with the horse, there's a physical barrier there with the horse in between. So they're standing on the off side, the volunteer is standing on the off side, and the student is standing on the on side leading. So we are doing that. We haven't had a ton of ground classes. Most of our summer programming was mounted. The first lesson of all of our sessions, like our consecutive sessions, are ground classes, but we've only had one summer session so far with all of this, so we've just had very few ground classes. Most of them are mounted. Moving into the fall session, which will start next week, there will be a couple of classes where we are doing ground classes exclusively. Students are going to be working on showing their horses in hand at the end of the session. And that, again, will have students or volunteers on the opposite side of the horse. If they need that extra physical support to stop and start their horse, of course, their volunteer will be clipped on. But we have the physical barrier there of the horse, and everybody will be in masks. So we've got that going for us.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you guys at Happy Trails are doing some pretty great stuff. I want to give somebody else a chance to share if they want to. I see that we have Paige and we also have Max. So either one of you, feel free to jump in and just kind of give an update on where you are in your programming. You have to unmute. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Hi, I'm Max Freitas. I'm from Equine Therapeutic Riding Program in Santa Rosa, and we are right now sandwiched between the Napa complex fires and the Sonoma County complex fires. So we're actually on a session break. Similar to, I think, almost everybody else. We are only riding those students that need, at the most, a horse handler or a, somebody to spot them, but that they can independently mount and dismount and wear a mask at all times. As was said, if it's a real hot day, we haven't had too many of them up until last week, we'll stop, space ourselves, they can drop the mask, get some breaths, and then go on. And that's really it. We're probably serving a third of our population who can meet that criteria. So, you're kind of stuck in terms of being able to accommodate, and probably, I just know that other 2/3, this is their activity of the week, and it's really hard to not be serving them. And the parents, of course, and guardians are going crazy with just the confines and not being able to get out and all the rest of it. But actually, a lot of people don't want to come. So even though, we've offered, variations of it, the majority, there's a lot of hesitation on volunteers and clients to not come and participate. Even when we did an alternative 4th of July, COVID responsible, where they didn't get out of their cars, we just did a drive-through parade. We had very few people actually participate. So I don't know the explanation for that, but it's the way it is, and we're just trying to cope the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely, fair enough. I think we all understand that whole process where, I personally had a lot of success with what we call our pony drive-in, but it took a second to catch on. And, some of the ones that were most interested came early. And then it wasn't until we had permission, of course, to share some pictures, and we put a little collage, a little flyer together, that we had other families go, oh, wow, that looks kind of fun. And Sally says, I really miss Princess. I want to go see Princess. And so then they felt like they could get in the car and come and at least just have some kind of interaction. Max, I was saying earlier that it gave me a chance to kind of get eyes on those participants and to see how are they following directions. Are they behaving? Are they using the hand sanitizer? Are they wearing the mask? How wet is the mask? Some of those sort of funny things that, but having them, being able to kind of see them. And of course, it was so touching. I didn't realize how emotional I was going to be about it when we were done. Like it was so good to see everybody. So yeah, I highly recommend like pushing it, because it has definitely given me a different idea of how to move forward. And there's 2 riders on my list right now that I hadn't put into this phase of reopening until I saw them in the car with their parents, and their parents were interested, and they were wearing the mask and weren't touching their face. And I thought, gosh, I think these 2 could come back, and they're, don't take a lot of support, but I wasn't sure about behaviorally. So you get to see that when you do those drive-ins.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, Courtney, how often did you do the pony drive-ins, and how often did participants repeat? Like, did they keep coming back every week, or what did you see there?
So we were also doing a lot of videos to kind of, little educational stuff. And this is what the horses eat in a day in the life, and picking a stall. And so we kept our pony drive-in to a once a month, and we set out the block from, let's say, 9 to noon. And we had 4 different blocks of time that we were going to use. We asked people to RSVP, and then sort of based on the RSVPs, we were able to then kind of group each of those participants into the time frame that their horse could be available. So we set it up in kind of a large dirt parking lot. And probably a blessing is that it wasn't by the barn. So it felt like they were coming to riding, but then they weren't really in the riding parking lot. They were on another side of the property. And we set up all of our rainbow weaving cones. We put them out there and we said car 1 goes to red and orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So we could accommodate up to 6 vehicles. And my staff and I then had the horses out and groomed, and, you know, depending on your horse, maybe had cookies in your pocket. And we would just kind of weave in and out all around through the cars. We would stop specifically at the car with the rider who rode that horse and just take a minute to check in. So, yeah. It was surprisingly good. I was saying earlier, or I don't remember who I was telling, that now that we're kind of getting back to more riding lessons, I'm going to have to kind of limit how we are doing that, and perhaps having those riders coming at their specific time slot, because I really did enjoy checking in and seeing you know, how that kiddo was doing, and, you know, how excited are they, and do they, you know, are they bored? They don't really want to be there. They're hitting their brother, you know, or how interested are they, and are they not touching their face? So I think it helped me get comfortable kind of being in proximity to people again, you know, and everybody has to wear a mask. And if you're not going to wear your mask, you have to roll up your window. So, you know, them's the rules.
Did
Go ahead.
that work the other way? Like you said, you got more comfortable with certain participants who you maybe didn't consider before. Did it work the other way where you're like, no, they're not ready?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. There's a couple kids that just straight will not wear a mask. And there's a couple that, you know, struggle a little with swallow reflex. And so maybe we're going to have some saliva, maybe, you know what, I kind of ran in a different direction one day. Allergies, right? I mean, come on, we're with the horses. Sometimes it's dusty. There's a little bit of wind. Maybe it's a Santa Ana, like who knows? But I ended up sending an allergy update bulletin that said, if you're currently back with us and you suffer from allergies, and I do, then please be aware that your rider needs to be able to sneeze inside of their mask. And if for some reason they can't, so this is what happened to me. So this kiddo, he was in my phase 2. He's pretty straight ahead guy, pretty easy to work with, follows directions. He does require a leader, but you know, we could kind of be on the long lead rope and really have a good space. And he had to sneeze, and he pulled his mask down. Achoo! And so I figured out real quick, okay, we got to figure out how to do this. So it's a consideration. And if your rider isn't going to do that, then, or is going to sneeze, wants to take the mask off, you know, how are we going to cope with that? So it kind of brings me to sort of my next slide, my next point. I'm sorry, I can't share this with you guys. I worked hard on it. Is that I created, so the slide says PPE and other considerations. So, so two things that kind of get me right away is with the kid that sneezed, decided, okay, and I worked closely with mom and dad, and I said, obviously this can't happen. What do you think you guys can do as a family to help, you know, our little guy understand, and what do you think you guys can do at home? So I needed parents to meet me halfway and say, oh yeah, absolutely. And so we just started working on life skills, one of which is washing hands, by the way. Is anybody else having trouble with kids washing hands? It's tough. So they were really willing. In fact, she came out and took some pictures of the hand washing station and put it in his social story that he's working with on his apps. So, so I thought, okay, well, what can I do to be prepared if this happens? Because stuff happens, right? I mean, it's therapeutic riding, for heaven's sakes. So I figured out, and I got on Amazon, and I got I got an apron, a 3-pocket apron that goes around my waist. And it includes clean paper masks, some gloves, some hand sanitizer, some tissue, 2 plastic bags. One is empty to take any soiled items away, and one that has some disinfecting wipes with it as well. I also, don't tell Path, broke rules, and I put a mounting step in our arena, not to be used for mounting, but for me to be able to reach that rider who is inevitably going to struggle getting those ear loops back on his head underneath the helmet. But if I've got my gloves and I have my mask, you know, then I feel like I can sort of safely assist him with that. So, so that was something that really kind of helped me get comfortable to move into having that next phase and getting from solely independent riders to somebody who may just need a leader. But, you know, poor kid has allergies. So, really, really interesting. And I'm still kind of kicking around the idea. I don't know, is a face shield better than a face mask? And, you know, we all, Region 11, it's hot. So we're struggling with the sweaty factor under no matter what you have on a face covering, it's going to be uncomfortable. So if anybody has any ideas or their successes on PPE or face masks or face shields, I would love to know.
I can speak to that a little bit, what we're doing at Happy Trails. Our volunteer coordinator is also a seamstress, and she made these fabulous masks, and they have like horse print on the outside, and we have 2 barn kitties, and so it has kitty print on the inside, and they're so pick and cute. But what we found when we did our staff test class with all of our COVID policies in place was that the cloth masks are heavy and they're hot, and it is a little bit more difficult. It's not like hypoxic. You're not going to get hypoxic with the mask. It's harder to breathe in and out of them. So what we did instead is, of course, masks are mandatory, but we got like these disposable ones, and they're way lighter. The elastic is nice, but they're much, much lighter to wear as an instructor. I feel like you can talk better through them. And for the students, particularly those with sensory sensitivities, it's not as heavy around the face. So we found that making those available, and our volunteers have found the same. Some of them have the masks that they like to wear. In fact, one of our volunteers made a series of masks for the gals that she volunteers with on a certain day, and those are really cute too. But those disposable ones, they're really nice because they are so much lighter when it's hot, even when we're in the covered arena. And then when I'm done with them, I cut the elastic so that they don't, wrap around anything in the garbage, but they're really easy to work with. And that's been a preference among our staff. I would say, as cute as the horse masks are, we've just found that fabric is heavy. And when you're doing aerobic walking or working outside, among others, it's hard to wear that versus being in an office or in a meeting. It's a lot easier to do the cloth.
Yeah, that's great feedback. And I have found something similar. I'm a sweater, so I kind of like something that's a little bit more absorbent than the paper ones. Are a little harder for me, but I definitely, I value everything that you're saying, because I do feel like you can speak better through them. They are lighter weight. They don't shift around very much. And yeah, is anybody using face shields at all?
And there's been some discussion that you still should wear a mask with a face shield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. And then there's the whole gaiter thing. A lot of people like the gaiters, but there's also been some recent research saying that they aerosolize even more minutely what comes out when you breathe or cough or whatever else. So in some ways they're worse than no mask at all, right?
Yeah.
So
and I had read that same study, and I thought it was very interesting, and it kind of brought me to thinking about face masks, of course, right? So we've got a couple of kids that have they have the little vent on it, and that's great for them, but not for us. And I thought to myself, gosh, we're heading in a whole different direction if we start to kind of mandate what type of mask we're using. And that's for sure something to consider, I think, as you're taking on more riders. So kind of speaking of which, I think I suggested that all of our participants buy their own helmet, because they're not that expensive. It's a small investment. Honestly, you know, a lot of parents were pretty happy to do it. There's a couple that are like, well, you know, maybe I could still use yours, which is fine because the majority of them are using their own helmet. But as you're inviting them back and they're signing their lives away on all of your paperwork and liability releases and all that, I think we can also pretty easily say, you know, these are the type of masks that we recommend. And maybe we recommend paper masks because they do fit nicely and they are more breathable for that outdoor activity that might be hot. And we all feel a little safer with it. So, and they're cheap enough, and you know, I hate to get into giving them away, but you could, if somebody, you could get a box and somebody arrives without it.
Right. And it might be something that you could do a community appeal for, and have people donate boxes of the masks because they aren't that expensive. And yet I think that some of the kids, I think, have made a bond with their mask. And they've gotten used to that mask because I see them come back every time, and it's like, you know, they want that mask. And so it might not work for everybody, but for some of them, that might be in fact, that gives me an idea that I might put that out there.
Good.
To have somebody donate if they want to.
There's a center in Texas that were doing the drive-up sessions, and they paired it with the donation drive. And so they're asking for whatever supplies they needed, like bring that when you come, and there's a bucket that you put it in when you pull up.
It reminds me of back to school, right? You have to go back with your boxes of
bring
Kleenex.
Your box of tissues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people are willing to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And then I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, so one of the medical clinics over here, on Maui in the state of Hawaii, one of the medical clinics put out a notice saying, if you show up at the door wearing a gaiter, wearing a bandana, or wearing a mask with the external vents, you need to call this number to reschedule your appointment. You won't be allowed in.
Wow.
And so that was right after that article came out, or the research came out about the different types of masks and their efficacy. I think maybe, you know, a different approach in like our world could be something like you said, Courtney, like we found out, and Nicole, like we found out what kind of mask works best for us. So maybe an approach can be like, this is what we found works best for our staff and other writers, FYI. And we'd prefer that you not wear these kinds of masks, and link to the article or the research. That might be a nicer way to do it. There was a lot of like, whoa, when that medical center post came out. I mean, it was effective. It got everybody talking. And I have had limited access to our center. I've been in and done some EquiZoom virtual classes from the pasture and from the barn. And we've done some volunteer trainings and some staff trainings. And I was wearing a neck gaiter, because one, it was like a cooling gaiter. And the other thing is I could pull it down and then pull it back up, and I didn't have to worry about like putting my mask in my pocket and putting it back on. But after reading that research, I'm like, not staying home, not going to wear that gaiter, because it was scientific research, which I appreciate. So yeah.
I'm the same. I'm heartbroken. The one that I had comes down. It offers a little bit of sun protection in my polo shirt. It's easy to get up and down. It's pretty breathable as I'm trotting around in the arena. And I was just like, oh,
I know.
So disappointed. But also, you know, we're smarter, and you know, and I think as center representatives and instructors, I think it's our job to kind of support really what we want to see. So yeah. Okay, so I want to check in with Ingrid again, because we've had an opportunity to talk about a lot of different things, and also Paige. We haven't heard from Paige yet either. I just want to see kind of how we're all feeling. It sounds like a lot of us are in a similar boat, and what I really want for this more than anything is to be inspirational for others to feel like they can make those steps if they haven't. So Ingrid had mentioned earlier that they are not seeing any participants right now, and I totally support that. I think if I could get away with that, I might I might try. Yeah, so have we been inspired at all? Or what happens when things get complicated? What are some of the things that, some of the considerations that we can have when we're not sure what to do?
Okay. We were close to, we are very small, as some of you might know. We have a total of, before the closure, we had 14 riders a week. And in June, we were really, really close to let 2 in because they can dismount independently and they only need a spotter. And then Riverside County started closing down again. We are in one of the mostly infected areas here. So we were in touch with our insurance, how we approach it, what is it allowed and what is not allowed. And they made it very clear to us, we have to follow local rules. Mm-hmm. There is no getting away with not following the local rules. And we still have, in the whole state of California, we have face masks. That's not a problem. It is a problem. I have a couple of older volunteers. They think it's a nuisance. They can't breathe. It's a nonsense. For me, it's a nonsense. I wear them all the time when I go out to the ranch. And the more you wear your mask, the more you get used to it. The easier it is to breathe at the beginning. I also thought I couldn't handle it, but it's getting easier and easier. But then in June, when it all started over again, the only thing we do to stay in touch with our students is sending them videos with the horses. The horses they use, and making little clips, little videos, and staying in touch with them that way. Financially, we can still afford it. We had a very, very effective fundraiser at the beginning of the closure. Financially, we were well enough off to keep our horses going. We have 2 horses that belong to the program. The other 2 are kind of sponsored. And so we made enough money that we can survive till the end of the year or longer. So we are not pushing it for ourselves, health issues for ourselves and for our clients, but we are trying to stay in touch. And that's all at this point what we are doing. And we are hoping that the curve changes, but it doesn't look all that great. So, okay, that's from our point. I switched in because I wanted to learn what other people are doing. So, and it was very interesting for me.
And Ingrid, do you feel like some of the information that we have shared will be helpful for you when you are ready to move forward?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have prepared. We have our own little wash station because we are at a boarding place. We got our own little wash station just in the area where our horses are. We have sent out our rules and regulations to the management, and they are supportive about it, that the area around during our classes will be closed off. There's no riding through or anything like that, because we are not in control of the whole place, of the ranch as such. So we have very, very strong support, but we are kind of chicken, honestly, to go ahead with it, okay?
Yeah,
it's very interesting to listen what other people are doing.
Is that boarding facility open to boarders? Are they doing any lessons with a lesson program, or is it just people who own their own horses?
There is one, actually, the manager has lessons, but it's independent riders. So they come in, they take a horse, and she is in the arena, and they're totally in. They prepare their own horse. She walks in when they are ready to ride. So that's the only lessons that are going on there now.
Yeah, that's good. Paige, you want to jump in at all?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We are pretty small. I'm in Bakersfield at Mare and in California, and we have normally, when we're functioning, we have about 50 riders a week. We have about 5 now that we've let come back. They're independent riders, and we do not let volunteers with our riders yet. For the next part, we will bring back, you know, the next step in the riders would be having horse leaders. But we normally take August off to let families adjust to school. And I know that this first week for me personally, having my kids go back to school has been a complete nightmare with this new schedule. And I don't want to put any pressure on people to try to figure out what their life would be like trying to add Mare back into it. So giving them the time that we normally give, trying to come back in mid-September to do more of the reopening phase and allow them to come back and adjust to their new normal with school and everything. Because most of our riders anyways are needing a lot of support. We barely have any that don't even have sidewalkers, so it'd be really close contact. A little note on face shields. We tried face shields and they just feel terrible. For some reason, they make me feel so claustrophobic, and a lot of our staff have tried them too, and it kind of impairs the vision for some reason. And I have prescription glasses, and so it just doesn't feel right, and I just want to like throw my head around like I was a horse, like, you know, get off of me. So yeah, I think the thin disposable masks are the way to go. Those seem to be really a lot easier to breathe through. We have 110-degree days that we've had for like the last 2 weeks, so it's pretty miserable. That's something else that we have to deal with, is the heat. So yeah, lots of things going on all at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the heat for sure. And that was also part of my understanding with the face shields, was it had a little bit of a greenhouse effect that kind of the more you were in there breathing, the hotter it would get.
Yeah.
So, but I do know that it was a possibility maybe for riders who wouldn't tolerate wearing a cloth mask, and that there's several versions out there now that clip on to like the brim of your hat. And so I wondered if anybody had any experience with that, because that potentially helps us get some of those riders that wouldn't tolerate the face covering, maybe get them back. So cool.
Have any of you, I have a question. Have any of you had parents or caregivers say, I'll sidewalk with my client or daughter or son or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah, and how have you responded to that?
My response to that was not right now, but I will definitely take that into consideration. Because honestly, it's not a bad idea. My thought is, if you can train them appropriately to work safely around the horse or walk next to the horse, I think the challenge is parental interference a little bit. That's my concern with having parents in. So my thought would be that if I had a rider, for instance, I'm considering bringing a rider back who needs a little bit of help with her mount, that if that parent or caregiver could help me through the mounting process, but then really she's very balanced after that then they're not involved in the lesson, but they can be supportive to me not having to have a volunteer there all day, or for that 4-hour shift, if I really just kind of only need like 3 minutes. So that was kind of how I did that.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth about it, because I had 2 sets of families ask about that. And I've been thinking about doing a training with them and just say, here's the bottom line. If I have to tell you more than once to not give input, then we're going to need to end the lesson and reevaluate participation.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the training. Like, ideally your parents would be going through the same volunteer training, that the same training, sidewalker training, that your volunteers go through. I've invited for ground lessons, I invited a couple parents back just to kind of be a spotter, because it was a group lesson. And we kind of agreed that that was something we could try. And the parents who said that they had horse experience did not know how to safely move behind a horse, which was worrisome. And that made us pull back all of that. And then it's like the mechanics, if you are bringing a parent in to do the training, it's like the mechanics of the training. Like, are they able to come without their child? You know, do they have childcare so their child doesn't come with them? Or do you want the child to come with them? And then are you stepping in to do hand over hand training? Like, is the rider on the horse and then you're showing the parent how to do that? Are you able to social distance while you're doing that? Probably not. One of the things that we've used in volunteer trainings before was a giant stuffed animal. So possibly you could do that. You could step in with a stuffed animal, you do the mechanics, and then step back, and then have the parent step in, have the parent do the mechanics of the mount and the dismount. But yeah, there's a lot to consider for sure. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, then the answer is probably no.
Yeah. It was a can of worms that I wasn't sure I wanted to open. And so, you know, I kind of entertained the notion and told her, oh, I think, you know, and it's a little complicated and I'll get back to you on that. And at the end of the day, same, Chrissy, right? Like, if I have to teach them or tell them not to talk, like, this is not helping my lesson. And what could I do as an instructor in that lesson? Is there something that I can do to feel comfortable in either having another staff member or a volunteer come and assist with that rider, or can I get comfortable doing hand over hand prompts? Which kind of brought back to that PPE apron, where maybe you have some gloves for that rider. And honestly, I'm telling you, the last thing I want to do is wear this mask in the heat, much less gloves. So, but, you know, if I can tolerate that for 25 minutes of, you know, helping this kid get back to some kind of quality of life, like maybe I can. And I think that's the biggest question, is this all so subjective? Like, what are you willing to do to try to get these riders back? So if I have to step in and do the training, you know, is that parent really helping? I don't know.
I can speak a little bit to that. We only have one student whose parent is a sidewalker, and that student will not wear a mask, so that makes her ineligible right now, and her parents are very understanding of that. Her parents are more than willing to wear the mask, but they've acknowledged, we realize that that's not really the issue here, you know, that if the child cannot, or if their child is not willing to wear a mask or can't tolerate it, they're in the same household, but their volunteer then is still at risk, and so is the instructor. So they've been very understanding about that, which is great. And then related to we don't have infection control aprons, but we do have infection control buckets in our lessons all the time. So we do sanitize between mounts. We're hosting classes of as many as 2 riders. So between students, instructors are sanitizing their hands, and then, you know, going to help the next rider. And there have been a couple of cases over the summer where I've stepped in to do a hand-over-hand support with a rider who's not visually understanding where they're needing to bring themselves. And so I've done that, and then right away I'm able to sanitize and offer them sanitizer as well. So we do have that going for us, because, and it's the riders that they're pretty independent, or they're new to us with the mental health program that we offer, and just need a little, okay, this is where you need to do it. And, you know, that physical, like Chrissy was talking about, like the physical mechanics of doing it, and then they get it after that. So it's a very brief moment in time. It's, you know, limited, and then there's sanitizer right there. We have opened up to our second phase, which is allowing 1 sidewalker back, and the students that we have that are taking 1 sidewalker, those classes are only going for 30 minutes. So it's much more minimal exposure. It's not a full hour class. And at this point, I'm expecting those students to mostly need things like attentional redirection rather than like physical support. So there will be some sustained close contact there, but again, everybody's wearing masks, and that was when I called to make re-enrollment and schedule things for this coming session. That was one of the first questions was, does your student tolerate a mask for 30 minutes? And at this point, most of them do. I only had a couple that said no, they're either tactily defensive or, they just don't really understand it. And that's fine. And the parents understood, okay, well then that makes them ineligible. Everybody was on the same page with that. But for even our little kids, I mean, they're going to the grocery store, they're doing, they're doing things where they've had to wear masks, and whether or not they get it, if they can tolerate it, that's good. And then regarding volunteers coming back as sidewalkers, we're not taking any minors. They have to be adults that can, like Courtney said, that can sign their life away. They acknowledge the risk. But we've had most of our population has said we want to come back. We know that Happy Trails is going to be diligent in everything that they're doing, and we are. I'm sure Leslie gave you guys the rundown of what's going on at Happy Trails. It's a lot, but they're more than happy to come back. They know that we're being diligent. And for, like Courtney said, that quality of life for the volunteers almost as much as the students, that a lot of them are retired or semi-retired, and all of their volunteer opportunities have gone away and their social opportunities have gone away. So they're chomping at the bit, so to speak, to get back, and they are willing to take all the precautions. We do have gloves available, and we have said you're welcome to them. What we have said though is if you're going to wear them, you need to wear them the whole time so that the sweat, a bodily fluid, is not being transferred in the process. So if you're going to wear them, you need to wash your hands still anyway, put them on and keep them on. And we've not had anybody take that up. So nobody's really interested in the gloves, which is fine. But of course, everybody's worn a mask, and we are, when they come in to do the check-in, I don't know if Leslie mentioned, we're doing like a health check for everybody that comes on the property every time, no matter what. At that time, we asked, does everybody have a mask? And if not, do you need one? And we have them there. So we had a bunch of volunteers that were really excited to sew way at the beginning of this. And so we've got a huge stock of both child and adult size masks that are cloth. And if they don't want one of those, we have the paper ones as well. So those are ready to hand out because everybody does expect that they're about to need to wear a mask. So if they forget, we've got some.
Excellent. So as I'm kind of scrolling through my slides, I'm kind of coming to the end a little bit. It is also 7 o'clock. So one of my last slides that it says, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And I think we've all pretty much done that, right? We have certainly local guidelines that we're following. PATH, I think, has done a great job of providing resources. I love the silver lining to this is that I think a lot of us as Region 11 and just PATH membership get to come together a little bit more and kind of, we're stronger together. We're doing this together, and the more we can support each other to be inspired. I was talking with another member yesterday that really helped me just feel a little bit better that I'm doing the right things, that my plan is working, my phases are logical. I'm being a big weenie, but I am gonna keep trying. And so I felt inspired to be brave, and that was my hope, was that we all could meet tonight and kind of just know that it sounds like we're all doing a lot of really good stuff, and working at your own pace, I think, is important. And then there's funding and all that nonsense. But I think this will run smoothly because we've opened slowly. We've prepared for everything we could think of. We made modifications as needed. I might still need to limit some exposure by not rushing into reopening with more impacted participants. And it seems like a pretty good course to follow. And I'm just glad to be here with all of you guys feeling that it's true. So
yeah, I think I feel like I always have that feeling before we do another, like before we open the drive up sessions, before we open virtual lessons, before we just sent out the email to all the parents saying, hey, we're, independent riders can come back. Here are the forms you need to fill out if you want to be eligible. I always have that same feeling like, oh gosh, this feels like too soon. I don't know if I'm ready for it. And then as soon as I hit send, I'm like, okay. I mean, we thought of everything we could think of. We're doing a great job, and it just, I feel like we're always going to have that feeling because we've never done this before, and this is a pretty scary time. But I think, you know, in most cases, like a plan is, you know, better than no plan at all, you know?
Well, and I feel like I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. And you will open and you will stumble into the kid who sneezes without his mask on, and you'll go, I'm going to learn from that. You know, and you adapt and you kind of move on. But, I forgot what I was going to say. I just got stuck on this, like the kid and the sneezing.
Well, I think it's helpful to hear from others where they're at, where they're going, what some of the issues, like you were saying, that have come up, and how you've dealt with it, because it is something we're not used to, and we're not going to anticipate everything. So hearing it from somebody else is very eye-opening and helps you plan for that situation yourself. So I think this was really helpful. Thank you for organizing it.
Yeah, I was happy to do it. I'm in the same boat that we all are. And, you know, I feel like like I said, I feel like I want to be a little bit overly cautious. I don't want to be an outbreak point. You know, I just don't want that to happen. And this is all new territory. And so I want to be extra careful, but at the same time, you know, two things, right? Trying to get back to some kind of quality of life. And, you know, then sometimes there's funding pressure too. And so I'm a little bit stuck between both of those places. And, you know,
And what your board feels about it.
Well, and then, you know, just feeling like if we can come together as a group and try to understand, you know, where everybody is, we all can go back to our people on the other side and say, hey, look, I sat with, you know, 6 amazing people last night, and here's what's happening. And we're not doing anything out of the ordinary here. And, you know, we're not behind the ball, because
That's
I think
exactly what I say in every staff meeting when I bring some of this stuff. So the people in Texas are doing, and these guys in California,
yeah, because I think our
That's what
board
people are
members
doing.
and our directors don't necessarily know what the state of affairs is, right? I mean, so as a membership, we have the finger on the pulse of what else is happening, and it's then our job to take that back. And so I, again, am happy that we're all doing a lot of the same stuff, and that feels really good. And yeah, so go forward and be brave. And honestly, that's kind of all I've got. So unless anybody has any specific questions or ideas, we'll just kind of open it there.
I'm good. I mean, I'm a counselor for a school district in California, Northern California. And so, you know, we have some teachers that are like gung-ho, I want to be back with the kids. I don't have a problem with this. I want to be with them. That's what I went into teaching for, blah, blah, blah. That's a small minority. Most of the teachers are saying it is not safe for us to be in this environment. And so where this goes, I mean, because I'm with the school district and the program's always kind of had a relationship with the school district, I'm kind of trying to follow where the school district is. You know, we're not going to even consider opening up till we go into the hybrid model. Right now, we are all on distance learning. So that's kind of where I'm waffling in terms of expanding any more than what we already do. Because I think people are looking to what's the you know, the status quo out in the community. So it's a tough call. And
it is. I agree with that, because everybody's got a different opinion about what should happen. And at the end of the day, we have to be as safe as we can be. And I found myself waiting for an epiphany. You know, like some great answer is going to come, and, you know, our governor is going to say something amazing, or, you know, I'm going to have some kind of understanding about kids going back to school. Because of course that's the new concern too, is that, you know, my county just dropped off the watch list. And so now in, you know, another week and a half, kids are going to be going back to in-person learning. And we just know that that's going to spike cases. You know, it's not rocket science. And so, yeah, it's, while I want to just kind of sit and wait to see it play out, you know, we do still have to try to be brave and do everything that we can. And, you know, I think the other great part is that we've learned that it doesn't live on surfaces the way initially we thought. So it's helping me feel more comfortable about our cleaning protocols, and, you know, that wearing the masks is really just such a big part. So yeah, it's hard. So I want you guys to know, please feel free to throw any questions or ideas out there into the Facebook group. I know that we are not the only ones that feel this way. So I just want to make sure that, you know, the entire membership has access to this kind of forum. So yeah.
Thank you, Courtney.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank
My
you,
pleasure.
everybody.
Absolutely. This was recorded, so we will get that posted up in a Facebook link here before we know it, and that way others can participate. You know, keep an eye out for that, and maybe you'll have supportive answers for people's questions. All right, everybody, have a great night.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.